larger in schizophrenia. The oversized ventricles proved to be evidence that other areas of the brain were smaller.
Your skull is made of hard bones that does not expand. So if the ventricles, these cavities, got bigger, the only way all this could stay inside your skull was that something else had to get smaller. And there have been a lot of studies subsequently showing that there is a slight, very slight, thinning of the surface of the brain, the cortex, probably that accounts for these changes in the ventricles.
Once again, evidence pointed to a connection between damage in the prefrontal cortex and schizophrenia, which may help explain why the disease appears most often during adolescence.
How can I trust you when I know what you've done?
Baby, please believe that all that is done.
If I decide to go along,
I promise I won't do you wrong.
are you sure?
Researchers are now looking more closely at developments in the normal adolescent brain for clues to what might trigger the onset of schizophrenia.
The adolescent brain is far more flexible, far more adaptable than we had ever realized before. There's enormous potential for change, and not just change in sort of psychological dimensions, but actual physical, anatomical changes.
At the beginning of adolescence, the prefrontal cortex goes through a burst of growth as neurons reach out to connect to other neurons, much as they do throughout the brain during early childhood. And just as in children, the connections between neurons in the teenage brain grow stronger, or they are pruned back and wither away.
Sort of nature's way of making sure that the connections that do survive are hardy and robust. One of the ways the brain seems to try to figure out which connections to keep and which ones to eliminate or prune is based on the activities of the teen. The brain is searching for, what am I going to need to be good at to survive in this environment? And the way that it figures that out is, what am I doing now?
Adolescence could be characterized as a stressful time for the brain. There are chemical changes, hormonal changes, anatomical changes, changes in the expression of genes inside of cells. It's a time of great biological tumult. And the frontal lobe is fighting to adapt to the environment, to deal with all these inner instinctual surges. It's difficult. It's difficult with a frontal lobe that's normal to make it through adolescence. But we believe that patients with schizophrenia don't have a frontal lobe that's normal. We believe it didn't develop normally, probably from early in life.
Are there clues to schizophrenia in childhood that may explain the brain's later failure during adolescence? Can the child's brain be hiding within it the seeds of its own later malfunction? Psychologist Elaine Walker is trying to answer those questions by examining the home movies of children who later developed schizophrenia.
We were looking for evidence that there was some abnormality in brain function. And of course, one of the best places to look for that in young children is in their motor development. This child only uses one hand to try to catch the ball. This child is showing some unusual posturing of his left hand, hyperextension of his fingers. Normal children develop crawling in a symmetric fashion. This is a very asymmetric crawling pattern, and that is another characteristic that we observed more often in the children who later developed schizophrenia.
Walker's observations cannot be used to predict schizophrenia. Although these eccentric movements appear more frequently in children who eventually develop the disease, they can be found in normal children as well. But Walker's study is consistent with the theory that schizophrenia is caused by events in early brain development, even, perhaps, just months after conception. As neurons are born, take their place in the developing brain, and then join one another in an intricate network of connections, scientists see the possibility for error. The genetic makeup of the brain itself, poor nutrition during pregnancy, or a viral infection, all may have devastating effects. Whatever the cause, scientists speculate the damage lies dormant until adolescence, when the prefrontal cortex goes through its final maturation.
Schizophrenia could be a disease in which this last developmental stage is run amok, and we end up literally with the wrong connections in the brain.
Courtney, we're going to bring a monitor over in front of you that you'll be viewing throughout the study.
Okay.
Schizophrenia disrupts not only the thinking parts of the brain, but it can also have a severe impact on the emotions.
Courtney, next you'll be viewing some slides that most people find to be pleasant or positive in content. Just relax and watch.
To probe the emotional regions of the brain, researchers flash a series of pictures on a screen and use advanced imaging technologies to watch the brain's response. The normal brain responds to these stimulating images by activating regions of the brain that process emotions. These same regions respond poorly in many people with schizophrenia.
People with schizophrenia will very often say, I've lost the capacity to feel related to other people in the world, or even related to the world at all. It's both an intellectual emptiness and an emotional emptiness. And it's one of the factors that drives people with schizophrenia to feel like taking their lives, to feel like committing suicide, because they feel as if they've lost themselves.
The thing that really crushed me was the lack of motivation, the negative symptoms of schizophrenia, the flat affect, the emotionlessness, the apathy. Those were the things that really got to me.
He would talk frequently about not being able to feel anything. He could feel no sorrow. He could feel no joy. There was just nothing there. No sorrow, just empty. That's what he would describe, just empty and black.
I didn't want to live the life that I'd been given anymore. It was so contrary to what I wanted that I didn't want it anymore.
When I heard that Courtney had attempted suicide, I was not surprised. He had talked about it, he has had ideas about suicide, and he's one of those individuals that understands he has an illness and it's not likely to go away. That he hadn't succeeded was perhaps what surprised me the most, because he succeeds in most things that he's done in life up to this schizophrenia.
I wrote in my suicide note that why take death seriously if the quality of life is poor? And that thought really stuck with me for a long time.
While schizophrenia has stolen Courtney's emotional life, other teenagers with schizophrenia suffer from hallucinations as well. Frightening visions and voices that do not exist.
June 17, 2000. Dear Diary, it's been strange. It wasn't a good day. I'm so depressed, I hate myself. Things would be better if, well, you know, gotta go now. Love, Sabrina Yeskel.
Sabrina Yeskel was an excited 12-year-old when she first went off to sleepaway camp. Once there, she began to hear voices.
They were loud. The tone of voice was a deep, heavy-set voice. They've said to kill yourself. They've said, I'm not worth living.
Sabrina's mother rushed to camp, but barely recognized her daughter.